Hello, everyone. My name is Asana Hanu, and I'm excited to welcome you here to this edition of the John Oliver Killens reading series presented by the Center for Black Literature. I'm excited to be here today for a moment of clarity with Ty Allen, author of No Jewels, a biography of sorts written stanza, Ala T. Farmer, Timbisa S. Mshaka, and we are going to start today by welcoming someone very special to bring greetings, Dr. Brenda Green. Dr. Green is a professor of English, founder and executive director of the Center for Black Literature, and director of the National Black Writers Conference at Medgar Evers College and the City University of New York. Professor Green's research and scholarly work includes composition, African American literature, and multicultural literature. She is the editor of the African Presence and Influence on Cultures of the Americas from Cambridge Scholars Publishing, co-editor of The Resistance and Transformation, Conversations with Black Writers from Morton Books, Meditations and Ascensions, Black Writers on Writing from Third World Press, Redefining Ourselves, Black Writers in the 90s from Peter Lang Publishers, and Rethinking American Literature from the National Council of Teachers of English. As a scholar and literary activist in English studies and African diaspora literature, Dr. Green has led literary and writing seminars and been acknowledged for her professional work by many educational, advocacy, and educational organizations and institutions. Dr. Green has extensive essays, grants, book reviews, and presentations in English studies and literature. So without further ado, we will prepare ourselves for this conversation and we await for greetings from Dr. Green. Today's conversation is going to be about Ty Allen's debut poetry collection, and it'll be a reflection on both abuse and healing, music, poetry, and how we can think about these kinds of stories in today's time. We have an amazing group of panelists. This is going to be a rich discussion, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this discussion today. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so we are also excited about that. As we welcome Dr. Green on, Dr. Green, if you can please make sure to bring on your camera and your microphone.
Oh, is that what it is?
And we will.
Oh, okay. I've been sitting here waiting for everyone. Okay.
There you
Sorry
go.
about that. Okay. Thank you so much, Dasan. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our first John Oliver Killens webinar during this time of the pandemic. And I thank all of you for sharing this evening with us. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. It's always very strange to hear someone else introduce you. And we're very excited to do this debut John Oliver Killens webinar with Ty Allen, poet, author, musician, and producer. I'd first like to acknowledge our Center for Black Literature staff and production team, Clarence Reynolds, Director of the Center for Black Literature, Simone Wall, Digital Event Manager for the Center for Black Literature, Sherelle Williams, Program and Marketing Associate, April Silver, Communications and Marketing Director, and Leah Bird, Associate for Marketing and Communications. I also like to thank the Office of Communications at Medgar Evers College for helping to share the word about this event, and for all those who posted and retweeted and shared the program on their social media sites. We're living in trying times, and now more than ever, it really takes a team, and in particular, the social media team. The John Oliver Killens Reading Series is one of the major programs at the Center for Black Literature. Our other programs include the National Black Writers Conference and Symposia. The conference is held in even years every other year, and the symposia are held in odd years, on alternate years. We also have the Wild Seas Writers Retreat, the Re-envisioning Our Lives Through Literature program, which is a youth program aimed at getting our young people to read literary arts and to create stories and texts about them, and our Elders Writers Workshop. We publish the peer-reviewed journal, the Killens Review of Arts and Letters and Tales of Our Time. And I also host a radio program, Writers on Writing, over the airways of WNYE 91.5. I encourage you to visit the Center for Black Literature website to see all of our programs and the activities that we're involved in. So the John Oliver Killens series, named after John Oliver Killens, who was our writer in residence at Medgar Evers College in 1984, is something that was established in his memory. It was established in 2010 as a forum to present authors, poets, and scholars with opportunities to read from their recently published work and to enable you, our audience, to meet our authors firsthand. You're meeting them virtually, but you are meeting them. And our writers through this series will share their processes, challenges, and rewards of creating texts that serve as a representation of the many voices that contribute to storytelling in the Black community. I met Ty Allen many years ago. I'm not going to say how long. And I've watched him emerge as a poet, teacher, and musician. His book, No Jews, a biography of sorts, written in stanza, was an eye-opener for me. The themes of abuse and healing have always needed more discussion in our community. And as scholars, mental health experts, and researchers reveal, issues related to abuse are more prevalent in this coronavirus environment than ever, and we need open discussions about ways to heal. And Ty Allen is joined in conversation by a weighty group of poets, activists, and artists who are going to explore the intersections between abuse, masculinity, healing, music, and poetry. I thank all of you. Cultural critic Greg Tate said in a review that Ty's book was platforming a voice for the voiceless. And this is what I thought as I read this book. It exposes the secrets in our lives and unfortunately resonates with too many Black men in our society. Ty is part of that generation of writers who are illustrating the complexity of the experience of Black people, in particular Black males. And he has written a book that reveals hidden truths. So I'm looking forward to this heavy and weighty panel and to an invigorating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green.
Okay.
So I want to take a moment to introduce you to the panel for today. We have Tembisa S. Mshaka, who is an award-winning creative, executive, author, filmmaker, voice actor, activist, and brand specialist. Tembisa is the author of Put Your Dreams First, Handle Your Business. She holds a degree in international relations and ethnic studies from Mills College and is a graduate of the film producing program at New York Film Academy. Tembisa is a multiple festival selected writer, director, and producer, and a proud mother of 2 children, ages 20 and older. Thank you for being here, Tembisa. Al Latif Farmer has over 15 years of experience with New Jersey's Educational Opportunity Fund at Mercer County Community College in West Windsor, New Jersey. His primary areas of emphasis are leadership development, minority male achievement, identity exploration, and community outreach. Al Latif is also a freelance writer and contributor to numerous websites and publications. Thank you for being here, Al Latif. And once again, my name is Dasana Hanu. I am a writer and performing artist and recording artist. I am a curator and educator. I'm a visiting lecturer at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill with the music department. And I am also the Rothwell Mellon Program Director for Creative Futures with Carolina Performing Arts. I am also someone who has had the pleasure of being able to work with Ty, as we both are a part of a live music project that was called The Originals, Gil Scott Heron and Oscar Brown Jr., and is now known as Super Superb. So I'm excited to be here. And I think that the first thing that we should do today is hear from the author himself, Mr. Ty Allen, as he shares from the book that will be the source of our discussion today, which is No Jewels. Ty?
What is up? Thank you, Dr. Green, Dasan, Latif, of course, Tembisa. All right, I'm horrible reading from books. I apologize. All right. Can smell the passion while tasting thick air. Covers are draping the bed. Pillows are colored, sticky, and drenched. Midday. The boy drills his host while tightening fingers, eyes closed to the sun. Heat in the room slipping off their skin, afraid. An urging to run or pull away is not consistent with her want for speed and power. A need to go and pull out while order starts, but this stick is hers and fluid. Midday. The sheets are roped while dribbles darken spots. The push and push grits his nerves, ooze her eyes, afraid. Pain stains her face while nails trail his back. What makes her like this? Couples his beats his brow, afraid. His more daddy, lot less family. Hopes a mother's frowns are coming around soon to interrupt us. The sun burns, the rubber hurts. This new urge emerges of going to pee while takes over him, her. He's a size too big for a boy age small in a rooming house when it's midday. She's an empty heart box for a boy learning love is their private time. Don't be. I'm supposed to be two of these, so let's go to something a little more happy. Adjust part 8. Somehow I long hated her and kept a heart that patterns itself to hug trees, kiss flowers with no excuses. Summated her life with cusses whilst away from demons to dress stars, walk moon, remain sky blue. There are days in gray or funny colors. I self-talk my hands down from guns and slaps and knives. Some unfocused afternoons full of grimaces and headaches that recall every pound of flesh while recreating the smells in her deceit. Old Testament punishments are condemned and then discarded. Because the IQ and haiku really is 911. Never feel afraid to find refuge and freedom from terrible hands. Nothing to offer but remembrance without wise. All I raped, bagged, and placed on the curb. Cliche close to the curbs and the cans, waiting for trash day. No Jew. Really? Snapping fingers, Visa? Really? We don't do that. Oh, we don't do that. We clap hands around here.
Hey, thank you, Ty. We're going to accept all the claps and snaps and all of those. You deserve it, brother. It's a powerful, powerful piece of work. So then, as we transition from hearing that work to moving into the discussion, I want to start by asking a question of you, Ty. It is often said that there's a catharsis in writing a thing and then freedom in sharing it. So what I want to hear from you is what it was like, what the process was like of putting the book together, and what has the response been since you decided to share this and offer this to the world?
The first part is the idea for the book was actually Patricia Spears Jones. I have a manuscript that is actually has a publisher already who's probably mad right now. This book came out before that one. And there were 3 poems in it about abuse. And Patricia suggested I take those poems and create a whole new book on abuse and oppression from a straight man's point of view, who went through abuse, came out okay, can have a conversation about it, like other men who have gone through it but don't find a voice or a medium that talks for them. Initially, I was like, nah, I don't need to do it. I already dealt with my mama. And her response was, that's the point. You should be helping other people with theirs. Now I'm paraphrasing. I'm sure if Patricia's under somewhere, she's going, boy, that's not what I said. But, and anyone knows I know that to be true. But I thought about it for about a month. I understood what she meant. I started to figure out I shouldn't write about just me. I should meet other men who were having issues. And the idea was, okay, I interviewed about 10 dudes. And I talked to them about abuse, whether they were abused or not. I had a conversation about abuse. And I took those stories of what they heard and what I learned from them, and I wrote the book. So I used my story and the stories of others to create a book that wasn't just about me, it was about Black men. And that was my goal. The response is interesting. Before the response, there were people who told me I shouldn't write the book. They're like, oh, don't write a book so small. Why are you touching that subject? Just write a book of poetry, collect your poetry. At this point now, you should be just writing a book about poetry. And I'm not interested in writing a book for poets. I don't hear novelists writing books for novels. I want to write a book that people that I knew could read and understand and grasp. And I think it's worked so far. I've had some really great reviews, blessedly from magazines. I've had some really great criticism from people I trust who have told me what I could do better with the next book and then with this book. And which is the most important thing, I've met people, and I've met people online and in real life who have told me thank you. This book has helped me either get through a moment, resolve a moment, or have conversations with people who they felt needed to have a moment about their own abuse. I was in Detroit at the the Charles Wright, and a young lady told me that she used the book from our last show. She bought it and gave it to one of her boys, homeboys, and he never had a conversation about what happened to him. This book allowed him to go get therapy. I had a guy email me one time telling me that this is what I needed to read because no one ever spoke for him. So those are the cases where I really feel the book was important. Now, I'm gonna take the grandson one too. I'm not gonna lie about that. But the most important thing was really that people can take this and use this, and I'm happy that I was able to do that. I mean, what small or large part this played in helping someone ascend and emerge from their trauma, I'm all for it.
Wonderful, and that is the perfect segue to the opening question for the panel at large. And I think you set that up wonderfully. And so, with that in mind and everything that you said, especially about the response that you have gotten, we know that art and culture is a powerful medium for reaching, engaging, and connecting with people. So what does it mean to use a medium like that for telling these necessary but sometimes difficult stories? What can happen when we decide to do and encourage those kinds of things?
That's for me?
For everyone. That's for everyone. No. This is for everyone. The battle has begun.
I guess I'll start it off. Hand it off to you fine folks. I think the part of the problem that we are often afraid to have conversations that are, I don't use meaningful, that are scary. And traditionally in Black culture, Black men can talk about only one type of abuse, and that's oppression. That's oppression from supremacy, oppression from the state. When we discuss oppression that are personal, be it mental, physical, sexual, or any other abuse in that area, then you're afraid of being labeled soft. You're afraid of being labeled, in some cases, even gay. Let's use that word. We think it's an attack on our manhood. And I tried to use the book in a way. I purposely wrote the book that it was from a person who was angry. And that wasn't by accident. Because I know that brothers can jump on anger. And then when they jump on anger, and we have them there, I have you releasing some emotion. So now I have some emotion, I drag into other. We talk about other stuff. I got you, at least I have you emotional in some capacity now. Now, I also realized that was a dangerous move because I'm also now promoting that being aggressive and being big and being angry is the only emotion that we have. So I knew the negative of doing that, but I had to make a decision. Was it I'm gonna try to be cute and flowery and try to be on some special thing, or am I gonna go with meet people where they are and try to bring them somewhere else? So it was a dangerous move. I think it worked for the most part. And I'm sure that someone out there is like, no, it didn't, and I'm willing to tell.
I would like to just interject and say that I think that a book of poetry gives someone who may not have proximity to mental health management with a mental health professional a private way to get in touch with whatever they may have experienced or been triggered by or have witnessed. And it allows them a safe space to be introduced to the idea of taking that inquiry about what happened and processing it privately at first. I think that therapy is heavily stigmatized within communities of color and certainly in the Black community as the daughter of a psychiatric social worker. May my mother rest in peace. And there are other clinicians in my family. I don't have that stigma, but I know that it's confronting for people to speak to someone that maybe they've never met or that they don't have a familial connection to, and try to talk to them about something as scary or as private as having been abused or witnessed abuse. So it offers up that opportunity where they may not have the access or the exposure to a therapist who either reflects their identity or their background, or their cultural experiences. And that really is a great source of power to me. And I'm so grateful that you did this book, Ty, because if nothing else, you can offer it to someone and say, take this, see if there's anything here for you, if anything is sparked from it, or if you see a little bit of yourself in it, you can take some steps from here and know that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to express an emotion other than anger. I mean, my son is a college graduate now. Woo, that just happened a couple weeks ago. Thank you. We talk about this a lot, about managing one's emotions, right? And the impact that holding those emotions in has on your spirit and your body, right? So, we're big on therapy in my household, and mental health management, however that looks, whether it's a spiritual practice or, having the tough conversations. But a book is a private opportunity for someone to experience a reflection of themselves that they may not be ready to or be able to share with a mental health professional.
Yeah, definitely. I think art really allows people to increase their vocabulary when it comes to emotions. I think often, like Ty said, he wrote a book from a position of anger, but if people really reached into the poetry, they will find everything. They will find shame. They will find hurt. They will find just the hidden parts of us. And I think that's one of the best things that art does. Like when it's done properly, it really allows people to identify their emotions, and also get to the point to where they're able to actually share them, because now they identify with them and they can say, all right, this is what, I want to move towards this truth in me. And now I have some words or, a sound or a phrase to help me identify it and name it.
Mm. Now, one of the things about this book is that it is a male survivor story. And survivor stories are so important and so necessary. One, because we understand we need to believe survivors. We need to hear them in order to be able to better advocate, to better challenge and dismantle and push back at some of the things that create an environment where rape and sexual assault can exist. But specifically in this moment, there is right now a beautiful movement, an opening of a door for men to look at male survivorship, especially when the perpetrator is an older woman, as assault in a way that hasn't been talked about before. And so what does it mean to have a male survivor story like this available to add to that conversation?
It means everything to me, because it shows us that a way that we were taught was wrong. It allows us to start unlearning some of these quote unquote rites of passages that we ascribe to certain experiences that now we can call abuse, we can call molestation, we can call rape. But before it was like, oh, you should be lucky, but we know it's not real. And we know the harm that it can do to people when they have these experiences. So I think for Ty to share his truth, but also combine that of 9 other men or 10 other men, I think it adds to the conversation that had really, I'm not going to say started, but was really a light was drawn to in the last couple of months, especially with Boosie's comments about his sons and his nephews. But I think it allows us to have a conversation about the hurt and the harm that we do to our boys as well, who become men who hurt and harm people as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ty. I can see it. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's funny. I wrote the book, and I'm trashing my own book sometimes. But part of that is that, no, because I see things and I see nuance in things. I think it's difficult for people to have a conversation that's difficult. And I know it sounds like double talk, but it really is difficult the third time. And if you get art in some capacity to show space, because I think all oppression is the same. I've been saying this for a long time, that you view someone on oppression, a person who feels they lose their voice, that they don't know what to do next. So when young men go through it, a sexual experience that's too young, or a sexual experience that not just too young, but is on deceit, that throws them off for the rest of their life. So like the whole, I don't know the young rapper Boosie, but I'm willing to gamble $10 that there's a story behind that. There's a story behind his situation that we're not privy to. Now, is he a predator? Is he abusive? No, because only 1 in 6 predators, 1 in 6 said it's like what, 13%? I think a number, a small group of people who are abused become abusers. But they are affected in some capacity, and it shows up in their everyday life. And maybe how it shows for Boosie. So don't actually protect young men and then also protect them after the fact. Then we get another cycle of abuse, another cycle of anger, another cycle of destruction. And destruction may not be public. It might be the young man who's too quiet in the corner, who could be the next president or next governor or next artist or just a nice guy who's a janitor in the school. He won't flourish because he has trauma, and the trauma dealt with. And then we're back to square -1 again.
It brings up an important point about agency over one's body, and this is something that that systemic racial oppression and physical sexual abuse share is the robbing of agency from one of their own body. And I think that women are typically socialized to be hyper aware of this because of the prevalence of patriarchy and rape culture, and that the onus is typically placed on women to not get raped or not be assaulted. And so we're very hyper aware of like our body, who's near us, what are we doing? Why are you touching me like that? And I think that the disservice that patriarchy does for young men and boys is that it makes them feel like they're safe and they can just be, when they need to actually have that same level of awareness and confidence in speaking about what does and doesn't work for them in terms of contact, unwanted touching, what is appropriate and what isn't, and asserting that agency over their own bodies. And it's not something that's really talked about, I don't think, in families to the degree that it should for young men and boys in the same way that it is for girls and women.
Yeah.
No, and one of the offshoots of this disparity in conversation is that you have folks that grow up carrying trauma, and we are in a space where you're hearing the term trauma informed more, but it's always both encouraging and disheartening to have something become the newest trend to raise awareness about something when it's already been a thing that folks have had to survive, recover from, heal from, and move forward from. But with that, my question is that what are your thoughts about trauma and being trauma informed, moving from a practice that can be a part of people's work to it being a part of our understanding of our communities, and that we are in community with folks who are carrying trauma, and that some of the things that we see and some of the behaviors and some of the responses is from the trauma that is being carried. And that can start at a very young age, which means that even the behavior we see from both young folks and adults can be from a source of trauma.
I laughed when you said that because my wife's a therapist. And so since we've been home with the pandemic, I hear the word trauma informed at least 10 times a day because she's doing a lot of different types of corporate trainings and consultancies. So I just hear it over and over again. So I'm learning, as I sneak a peek or eavesdrop on her conversations. But I know, in my work in higher ed, I know in my time there, the need for our departments to become trauma informed has grown exponentially because we've come to the point where our students are actually sharing much more up front. And, and we're coming face to face with a lot of issues that we weren't necessarily trained for. So I imagine in other areas of life, people are trying to catch up to what the therapists, the social workers, the school counselors have been dealing with for years. So I imagine the need is just robust.
Wow.
So now I know. So I myself have been working for many years with the state coalitions against sexual assault and domestic violence here in North Carolina. And one of the things that I had a chance to do as part of some funding from the Office of Violence Against Women was to work with our HBCUs. And many of them echoed the same thing of how many more stories they're hearing. The openness of students is, just the nature of the environment that we are in. Whether they're sharing them formally or informally, and the trying to catch up to being prepared to these stories. The other thing, though, is that we recognize and understand the power of art, and you have someone like Ty and other artists and all these artistic mediums, and when you put them in the hands of folks, what oftentimes happens is a lot of truths come out. And I know I find myself trying to explain that to whether it's counselors, whether it's mental health services, to a number of different folks who are there to serve and to help heal, that there needs to be a greater awareness that is in the art, that the art becomes a safe haven for a lot of this truth telling. It doesn't always mean that every artist is prepared for what comes out of their own work and what that brings out, or for when they are in the presence of other and mentoring and encouraging other artists and what tends to come out. Have you found yourself in situations where you see that the art as a place where some folks are dealing with some of these things they've been carrying for the first time, and what that can look like?
Yes, a lot. Actually, with this book, a lot. Well, I don't want to give typical examples. I don't want to be general. Whenever I do works, like for example, I'll do songs at shows from the book, because the book has a soundtrack, and we use the soundtrack to get people to want the book. And folks will sing the song, and I'll see the person again. They say, "I come back to that city," and then I realize what the song was actually about. And then they'll say to me, "Well, I found a book with the song," and that's all they'll say. And look at me, And I already know what that look means. That if we were somewhere else with a whiskey or a cigarette, this would be a long conversation, and you might start telling me something that you haven't told someone else, and that was part of a problem. And then I got with I don't know if you might be in the thread. I got with one of my boys, a couple of my boys, like how can we make sure that we don't just leave people out? And my book is called No Jewels. I'm a God body and Muslim, or used to be Muslim, or whatever I am, some kind of God body Muslim thing. Jewels were information you use to deal with challenges. I didn't think I had answers to people's trauma. That is, we need to start the conversation though. So no jewels is that I don't have the answers, but I have a conversation with you to start. So right after that, I was like, man, that was still kind of whack of me. I need to at least have a place where people can come and talk about what's happening. So when we started doing like Moment of Clarity, there was the idea of we can do a show somewhere. Like when you and I do shows, we often do workshops to the show before, so people can kind of see how activism and art works. So I said, let me do the same thing with art, activism / trauma agents, because people really want to talk about what's bothering them, but there are no outlets of a conversation that will lead to some type of extra trauma because someone will dump their negativity on them or will cut off their conversation or take their conversation seriously, or as you said, won't believe. They won't believe, even though we already know that 7% of sexual misconduct are lies. So 93% of the people are afraid to talk about it because they know that when the person who lied, people are lying because one person lied, that becomes the actual protocol. So I don't know. I do know. Actually, I'm always feel bad that people are afraid to talk about it, and I always feel worse that though I'm trained to talk about it, I don't have time. I don't have the ability. I don't have the resources to really get people the full attention. And I just hope that I can lead them into having a conversation with someone else, if not with me. And I recognize that it's a dangerous play. I also recognize to not have the conversation is a far more dangerous play.
The great thing about creating a work, though, is that it's able to travel, right? It can live in libraries. It can be part of conversations like the one we're having. It can be utilized in coursework. And so you don't have to clone yourself or take yourself on the road and continue to, share about things that are deeply personal and sometimes, hard to revisit. But you've created what I like to call legacy work. It's a thing that just lasts well beyond the moment that you might have been in at that time as an artist, and that can be utilized by people you may never meet, but whose lives will be improved by its existence. And so, the creation really, in my mind, is you're all good from here. You shouldn't have to, do more on this if you don't want to, because you've created this work for people to then, take and utilize however they're going to. I mean, that's the whole thing about birthing a creative work, right? Is that you have your idea about how it's going to land and what it's going to do for people until it's out there. And then once it's out there, all these new ways, all these new realizations of how it's impacting readers and how it's making a difference for educators show up. And that's the beauty of giving birth to the work and letting it go and letting it be received.
Oh, the sound probably laughing. I don't believe in that. I think when I make something,
we ain't gotta agree, Ty Allen.
He wants to laugh. He wants to laugh real bad about that. I'm always like, yo, this is the goal. That's what it's for. And if you do it correctly, that's your choice. But this is the goal for it. This is why I made it. And we're gonna make it around this. So we gotta be responsible around it. And that's important to be responsible about the work that we're making. So, but you're right. I know you're right, but I want to be right.
Why can't we both be right? I'm just saying, you can feel how you want to feel about your work, but that, to my point, is once it's out there, there's going to be all these other feelings about it.
And it's going to work for itself.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be in every space. Like sometimes, you create the platform, and then it's up to us now to create the spaces for your work to be in there. You don't have to be in every single space. He's not going to let this go.
He's not.
It gives the other. It gives the other artists or creators in waiting that permission.
Right.
Sometimes, it's like Marion Wright Edelman says, you can't be what you can't see, right? Sometimes you need to see a work or know that it exists to have the permission to go forward and bring out whatever your expression is.
Yep.
Yeah. True. And again, I acknowledge you being right. It's just my own crazy. And I recognize it's my own crazy. And I know it's my own crazy. And I'm really being my own crazy. If my crazy fuels my writing and my music, so it's fine with that. And guys just sound crazy.
That's the best kind of crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it also presents us with an opportunity, and this is I think a good way to lead into our next question. Because when we look at the work as legacy work and it existing, what that means is that it provides cultural artifacts that can be used by folks who do that work as a part of them being able to increase the reach of their work, and that it happens in tandem as artists are processing and working through. There are folks out there who are mentors, who work in higher ed, who work in public schools, who work in communities, who have this work available, and they know the power of it. And so that provides those tools, adds it to their toolbox.
Definitely. Like I ordered 20 copies of No Jewels for my summer program this year, right? Because part of what we're going to do is we're going to explore it and then start to analyze some of the things that we're hearing and reading. Ty just find that out for the first time, but the fact the fact that it's created, like you said,
this week.
The fact that it's been created now allows me to use it in the space with my students to allow them to unearth some of the things that they've been holding on to, and then find the services that they need to be successful in higher ed and beyond. So thank you, Ty.
And so something that I know was important to talk about, I think when we think about a book like No Jewels and what it offers and the power of it, part of what that it allows us to do is to continue to challenge and interrogate rape culture, which means to challenge and interrogate heterosexism and heteronormativity, and all of the rigidity that can come from the way that we've been socialized to think. And in doing that, I think what also happens is it gives us experience in being able to challenge and interrogate and unpack a lot of other things that affect us, to challenge and unpack capitalism, to challenge and unpack patriarchy, to challenge and unpack class. And when we think about critical race theory and Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw and intersectionality, what we can think about is in a moment like this, how important it is to challenge, interrogate, and give voice to the reality of some of the things that we're facing. As we see these protests, as we see all the things happening, I see, and I would love to hear your thoughts about No Jewels and art like this, interrogating all of the kinds of experiences as being a thing that adds to the story of our existence in this society, continues to make us whole and not narrow folks, which allows us to show up whole in these moments, and kind of encourages others to really think and gives them the freedom to respond and react. I think we're in a moment where everyone is thinking about how do we sustain this energy and move forward. Art is going to be a part of that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts just about art and the courage to share and tell these stories and all these things in a moment like we're seeing right now in the wake of all the protests and all of the things that happen.
So one thing for me, I want art and artists to stop becoming the last thing that is in the conversation. It is an innovation of mine, and I know I don't want to say where people all work, but I'm sure the three of you work at really important places. Oftentimes, creative is the 33rd person called after the first 20. I know I have clients. When I'm doing the art thing, I'm doing a lot of strategy work and I work around policy. One of the clients I have now, I give him credit. He wanted that conversation from jump. You can see who he's hired, who was working there. He wanted the creatives to be in the room with him. He was coming up with strategy, why he was coming up with the practical, why he was coming up with the pragmatics. It's like, so how we have the conversation with all of us rather than, hey, let's bring the artists in after we built the building, but the ugly. Putting drapes on an ugly building is still an ugly building. It doesn't change ugly buildings. As if creatives are only there and artists are only there to bring beauty. We're there to not to bring beauty, but to bring function, to bring form, to bring content, to bring goals, to help move milestones. Heck, we can probably change the operation with our creators. Looking at someone like Dembisa, who is a super creative and a super project manager. The two aren't separated. And for UBO days, I ain't gonna front. Sometimes I would look outside my office going, what is Dembisa doing? I want to make sure, yo, go down there and walk through her section and see what happened down there to make sure we don't look bad. But and I'm being silly, but that was, I'm not joking. That was something we actually did because we knew that that's a great example of someone's an amazing strategist and an amazing actor and creator that can mold the two. And I say that because as we move forward and in these to operate when the emotion and adrenaline of the time goes down and has to start, we can't forget the artists are there not to be emotive, but there to execute. Because execution and policy are the two things that are keeping us. Execution and policy leads to institutional and institutional. Like, if you don't believe me, look at all the things from Bacon Rebellion to now. They all look like Bacon Rebellion. Everything, Constitution, the laws, 3/5, that's all Bacon Rebellion turned into policy and execution. So we want the artists to be there from the beginning, or not the beginning, at least close to the beginning. Sorry, and that was my tech talk. Thanks for coming to my tech talk.
I know for me, when I was a kid, I saw Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I still watch it. It's like my happy movie, right? It's where I go when I need things. And there's a scene when he looks up and says, we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams, right? And I know it comes from O'Shaughnessy's, poems, but I look at it as, we have to tell the truth, right? So artists have to tell the truth. So it's going to be important in 20 years that the artists are telling the truth about 2020. In 10 years, in 5 years, that we really have to tell the truth about what this moment and movement has become. From, people who are a little older in age, like myself, to those who are teenagers and even children who can recall. And that's, to me, that's the freedom of art, that freedom to tell the truth. And, that's what I want to come out of this moment and movement, is art that tells the truth.
Word.
So one of the things I want to take an opportunity to let all of our attendees know is that you can definitely feel free to ask questions. We will have a Q&A later, so you can post questions in the comments in the chat, and we'll definitely be on the lookout for those. there is one question before we move forward that I saw that I definitely want to ask about, because I think it both relates to the conversation we were having about no jewels, but also to this moment, considering that we're in this moment of thinking about the lives that are lost, from Aubrey to Brianna to George and so many others. And it's a question about grief, and how do we balance sharing grief, just plain mourning in a process, unique to you. Like, how do we deal with grief? And if there are, if any of you have thoughts about that, or can think of particular literature or art or anything that has helped you in thinking about grief. The person who asked the question mentioned Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, and but what are some things that you think about when you think about, reconciling and dealing with and sitting with and then moving through grief?
Well, one thing I'll say, I don't necessarily have a piece of creative work that I could reference like in this moment. I mean, one thing that comes up for me in terms of a really masterful examination of grief is To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar's record. Just this idea of negotiating, nihilism and imminent death, but also, wanting to have moments that are free of grief, whether that's an intimate moment or just a moment of one's own, just being themselves. And then, something traumatic interrupting that and sending you right back into the cycle of grieving. What I'm present to in this moment is that it's all gas, no brakes with this grief. I mean, if it's not 100,000 people dying of COVID-19, if it's not, me hearing about people whose church parishioners have lost like 10% of their parishioners, their worshipers to COVID, like, what do you do with that when you can't even do the proper homegoing, when you cannot get the closure from the rituals of sending them on after their transition? So it adds the insult to the injury and sort of like keeps the grief hanging like this fog. It doesn't really allow for closure, right? And then we know that a pandemic does not change the hearts and minds of the white supremacists. And so we continue to be brutalized. We continue to be, victims of state-sanctioned police violence while unarmed, while just at home in our apartments, minding our own business, like Breonna Taylor. And like, when do we get a break from grieving? When do we get to stop mourning? When do we get to not be crying or on the verge of tears, right? And then, we're looking at having to try to function within this onslaught that is COVID-19 and, the rabid white supremacist rage and violence. So then we as Black people are being asked to somehow go to work, homeschool, do the things that we normally wouldn't even be doing, but now we got to do that too, with that undercurrent of what to me just feels like a dull hum, like ambient, like room tone of grief. Like, when do we get to not have that? And so that is that's a question that I grapple with, because it definitely makes it harder to be inspired. It definitely makes it harder to create, and harder to be hopeful. And I'm an optimistic person, even though, I'm very much a realist, right? I also sort of see myself as an idealist and feel like we have the power to have a say in the matter of our lives. But even inside of that, it's like, what about all these losses that we seemingly can't control? And why can't we have an existence where that's not present? Don't we deserve that?
Amen. Like,
like what do you say after that? It's like, yo,
yeah. Like I had
I
things
mean,
in my mind.
Just to take a moment and echo everything that was being said for about the beautiful contextualization Tembisa gave us, which was just so on point. And I think it also was also speaks to why we continue to gather. It's something I think that gets misunderstood. And I think part of why it gets misunderstood is that we want to not have to gather. So I think there's a resistance to seeing it, but there's also something about the need to. And I think, Alex, if you were getting to this too, like like it is a part of our grief to gather, and to just know we're not alone in that grief. So I think that's also important. I know we want to trace. We have some special guests who we want to offer an opportunity to offer their thoughts and comments to the conversation, and both to tie in the book, but also to the conversation that we've been having. And I think that we're going to bring our first special guest on, writer and activist Trace DePass. And so what we wanted to do with these special guests is these are folks who can provide a lot of insight and a lot of nuance to the things that we're discussing. And with Trace, I know Todd would love to also have a moment for Trace to be able to speak onto this particular topic of grief. And so
the grief and about the grief and the conversation about art and movement, what Tembisa was talking about. I think he has a really good handle. He's been doing work. He's been doing work in the streets, so he might bring interesting commentary to what we're talking about. And he's young. Us old people, we're old. So.
Well, that brings up another point. I think for those folks who are older, I think one of the things we have found ourselves aging into is the moment when we were young and our elders had those conversations with us, and all of the energy and angst and all the things we were feeling. I think we found ourselves in that moment having those same kinds of conversations while also recognizing we are now those folks. And that's also an extra added kind of layer to what's happening with us in this moment. I know I had that, and I've talked to a lot of folks who are having that. That idea of in moments where your first instinct is to respond, you're now in a place where you also are responsible for a number of other folks, not just family, but like all of the kids and students and folks that you work with, which is where our elders were. And now we start to understand some of the things they were explaining to us. Tembisa?
Trace can't get in. Trace is trying to get in and cannot.
Oh, okay.
Saying, I'm trying to hop in, but my browser seems to glitch when I hop in.
All right. Well, we go see if we can get that worked out.
Can they send a link for them to click to jump in?
Okay. We'll see. We'll see how we can make that happen. While we're doing that, Danielle. Danielle, can you see if you can come on? Another one of our special guests, Danielle Bersico. Can you see if you can?
Technology.
I know. But we're going to need to work through it. There is, and while Danielle's coming on, I think one of the things I also wanted to kind of get your thoughts on is walking in tradition. And what does that mean to each one of you in this moment? Both, thinking about the tradition that you walk in, being Black, but also the tradition of the profession that you're in, and how that weighs on you in this moment.
Man, no easy questions, huh? So with this question here, we need backup. Call Demetrius for this one, because we just saw the source editor come up in here and talk some stuff right here.
Wow.
I'll go. I think what I've sort of recommitted to is talking to my kids about those traditions. You know, what our family does and doesn't do, right? And how we respond and don't. And what cycles are we breaking by, you know, the changes that we make when we say, you know, we get to choose how we're going to be in the face of whatever it is. I've been grappling with, because we're a Pan-Africanist family, so and citizens of the world, and so we've been grappling with this idea of protesting under COVID. You know, my son has asthma. He's immunocompromised. I don't want him out there, but I could not really stop him from, I mean, I guess I could have stopped him, but I could not in good conscience stop him from exercising what I had already taught him was the thing he needed to be doing, which was to speak truth to power and to rise up against injustice. And for him, that meant going to the protest. But as a photographer, I just asked him to like hang back, try to social distance, wear your PPE. But that's our tradition. Our tradition is to show up and to be present in those moments. And he did not want to miss out, but I was low-key grateful that he missed the first wave of protests and that he had to like kind of catch up and find a protest to go to shoot and be in, because this is just a different negotiation of fear. Normally it's, well, be prepared for, you know, police contact, be prepared for, you know, a stampede, or, you know, whatever the things are that happen at protests. And this time it was like, okay, this is the formula for tear gas relief. Make sure you have that. Make sure you have your water. Is your phone fully charged? Is your number on your arm? Like, there's a whole other level, right? And then the PPE, having the mask and the gloves on. So we have to hold fast to our healthy traditions. I'm big on letting go of the destructive, you know, family modeling, generational traditions that don't serve us. Big on that, really big on that. But for the ones that do work, we got to hold on to them, even when the circumstances are challenging.
I know for myself, I've been questioning, have I done enough? You know, like, and then what is enough? That's the other question. Have I done enough? And then what is enough? And, you know, I don't have an answer. I know as an educator, my tradition has to be to tell the truth about the moment, and allow, you know, the students who are under my charge to express themselves, and whether that be anger or hurt or just questioning. You know, I have to make sure that I'm there for them. Like, I'm standing in the gap for them between, you know, whatever's on their mind and what they're feeling. But personally, you know, just asking myself, have I done enough? What is enough? And what more can I do? Like, that's where I am.
At this juncture, it's funny because now my children are all adults, and like Tambisa, my children are grandchildren of civil rights workers, and I tried my best, and I thought they weren't listening to me when I was trying to teach them about revolution, about change. And then when they turn 17, 18, 19, 20, 27, 30, and you see what they're working on, I learned one big thing was that my methodologies, my patterns are not theirs. Points that I had to just be quiet and get out their way. One of them was online. Two of them are online right now, and they both have different ways to move that I would move. But I'm watching their impact, and the impact is crazy. It's interesting when you have I have two kids who are at the forefront who are doing some of the work, and you get a little scared, you get a little nervous. You want them to kind of stay in it. I'm not gonna lie. You want to go fight. It's like a basketball coach. You want to play the game, but all you really can do is scheme and say, hey, here's some. Watch for the back cut. Watch out for the back pick. Watch out for the undercut. And then you just let them rock. And it's scary sometimes. It's totally it's just thinking about it right now is making me nervous and scared, because you want them to live a long life and have a bunch of kids, and they just have a bunch of kids, but you also know that it's very important that they go out and do the work, because young people leave revolution. It's the 20-year-olds, it's the 25-year-olds, it's the 33-year-olds. Jesus wasn't 65. he was a young man out there who turned the word of wine. Rakim was 18 when he changed music. Right. These are I was laughing. I think I was telling this the other day. His daughter was online talking about George Floyd, and it was 15,000 people sitting in with her for an hour. And I'm like, man, 20 minutes, you get on my nerves. And here you have 10,000 people having a conversation with you, and you're motivating them to go give money to organizations, and you're listening to her. And she's affecting change. And the way she did it, I wouldn't have done it, but it's done. It was beautiful. And I watched Etiola, the same thing.
But it's seeped in, Ty. Right. Everything that you were imparting to them seeped in, and sometimes it's hard to know until they go out in the world and then you see it, or somebody else reports back about your child, and you're like, yeah, okay. Right.
And the funny thing, you're probably going through this, all of you, Jason has it too. You start learning from them. I know when Trace can get online, Trace in a couple of days taught me so much about what he was doing that it inspired me. Etiola constantly, I'm yelling at her at least once a month, but I'm constantly proud of how much I learned from watching her, how she works, and making me feel like I'm smart. So it goes back around. It's a blessing. I think Dimitri's online. Dimitri, turn your camera on, brother.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can definitely hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Turn your camera on. What are you chewing over there? Those Pringles you eating over there, we hear them too. The little blue camera, the top left, the circle.
Okay. Tag left circle.
Up at the top of your screen, the top left.
Right.
Oh, I see. Boom. Wow. Hello, everyone. So it's really great to listen to you guys.
So before we get on, he's gonna play humble. Dimitri is a Black and Glossy legend, and Black and Glossy is what we joke around. Me and my friends, a crew of us from the '90s. We were at the Source magazine. We were at Live. We were at YRB. We were publishers. We were editors, and people call us hip hop journalists. Now we were just journalists who love hip hop. We do anything. And Dimitri is now an amazing novelist with an amazing book out. And he's out there doing the work, raising two great children, traveling the world. And I'm proud to be a friend of his, and proud to know that I can rock with him.
And what is the name of the book?
Question. Right.
What my question?
What's the name of the book?
No, the book.
Oh, my novel's called God Loves Haiti.
Yeah.
So God Loves Haiti. In fact, at Medgar Evers College in their book fair a few years ago, they featured the book. I couldn't make it. I lived in Switzerland. In fact, I just moved back from Switzerland recently. But I know the book was featured at Medgar Evers College during one of its events, and I'm really honored to be here. I'm a big fan of. I love this discussion, and there is a huge role for literature to play in the moment. Man, when you're talking about parenting, guiding your kids on what to do if they're going to the protests, that hit a note because I have an 18-year-old son who looks a lot like Trayvon Martin, and he lives in Geneva, Switzerland, with his mom and his sister. And I moved here because my job moved me to New York. And we're debating sending him here for university or keeping him over there. And he's all set to come here to go to college. He got into Howard, Boston College, Stanford. He runs track, but it's like, wait, but first of all, this fall there's not going to be any college, it seems. And there won't be any college sports anyway. And second of all, Europe is very racist, but they don't have these random cop killings. They over-police black people. They ask you for your papers wherever you go. If you're not Black American, they treat you pretty poorly, but they don't kill you like randomly. We seem to have the market cornered on that. In South Africa, they enroll like we do in that regard. So what I have to say is, when you guys talked about parenting, how to guide your kids around, navigate the protests, and navigate keeping hope alive and keeping your dignity in the face of unseen, implacable forces. I wondered, are there movies and books that you guys also watch with your kids to help them navigate this stuff? You mentioned Kendrick Lamar earlier. He's my son's boy. Like the only concert he's been to was a Kendrick concert, like 3 years ago in Paris.
So as a person from the West Coast, I have to throw up a dub right now.
So he's my dude. So the music, Kanye's music and Kendrick, it does cover a lot about faith and activism. But I'm wondering, in terms of books and film, besides Spike Lee films, that you guys also keep on your radar. You keep in your diary, in your rotation for your kids.
So I have one that I got from my mom, because she was big on like the old school black and white movies, and I in turn turned my son on to it, and it was Nothing But a Man. It was Abby Lincoln, and I can't remember who was it. I don't think it was Sidney Poitier, but anyway.
Which
Nothing
one?
But a Man.
Blues?
No, it's called Nothing But a Man. Abby Lincoln is the lead actress in it. Even though she's a recording artist, she did an incredible acting job in this film, and it's all about the emotional toll of segregation, and I show that to him to kind of say, oh, it was Ivan Dixon, right? Thank you. The chat coming through. Appreciate you, Patricia. I show it to my son to kind of give him that, like, you don't know how good you got it illustration, but also that, that struggle is a continuum, right? And that it's his job to take that baton and get us to the finish line, right? Because this has been going on now how many decades, right? How many centuries? But yeah, Nothing But a Man is a good educational piece for that, and just really heart-wrenching. Everything that they go through, just trying to be right, and it does shine a light on what it is to try to just be as a Black man, during that time in America. So it's
God, relevant. Can I follow up on that and recommend Paris Blues? Sidney Poitier, Diane Carroll, and Paul Newman. I mean, Poitier is out in Paris. He's a jazz musician. He meets Diane Carroll, cutie, visiting from Atlanta. They fall in love. She wants him to come back to Georgia to join the fight. It's 1962. And he's like, well, in Paris, I don't have to fight. And they go through this debate for the whole movie. They fall in love, and they both disagree on whether being Black in America is worth it. That's a good book. That's a good movie to share with kids too. Black and white, super stylish, in Paris. Diane Carroll looks amazing.
Well, it's Diane Carroll.
But like, no, there's no bad frame for Diane Carroll.
Right,
Like,
there's no
not
such
a
thing as a
single
bad
frame.
frame of Diane Carroll.
Just
What
flawless.
about you guys? Anything you guys recommend?
Someone put in the chat, "I Am Not Your Negro," the documentary about
I'm
James
Not
Baldwin.
Your Negro is great.
That was
And
phenomenal.
That's I Am with Toni Morrison is good too.
Yes, really, really good. I'm so glad I saw it in theaters.
I think anytime, like, I don't have children.
I think it might be a good time to watch for him to watch She Got Game. My daughter only watches Lemonade and Blackish. Although Blackish does a good job, believe it or not. Blackish does a good job.
So there are a lot of
For
moments.
having middle class kids get perspective.
There's some
What about you guys? What do you
there's
recommend?
some good movies for young girls too, like Just Another Girl on the IRT, and I Like It Like That. Darnell Martin's film. You know, they're out there. The '90s, you know, sort of that renaissance of stories, coming of age stories for Black youth. You know, really good because A Higher Learning, John Singleton's movie about, you know, the kids in college, they really give you context for what the undercurrents are around social justice issues that are informing the way these characters are just trying to exist and what the barriers are within that.
I know in recent years, a lot of my students have really taken to The Hate You Give, the book. They really loved it. Like it's really been a
The
hot.
connection is bad. I'm not hearing sound.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we hear each other though? We're good.
Yeah. Well, what we'll
Yeah, we
do.
can.
What we'll do is we'll see if we can. If y'all can, we'll put that in the chat. Trace wants to get on, so I want to make sure we get him on before we close.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dimitri.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Keep up the work, guys. Let's do this again.
Love, D.
Thank you.
But he should automatically go back in. So I know you, Latif, you were talking about the Hate You Give.
The Hate You Give, yeah, like the book, like I was able to give it to students who normally don't read a lot, and they were really able to get into it. And then when the movie came out, it took a group to see it, and they were really impressed with the movie, but there were key parts left out of it from the book that really spoke to the fullness of the story. Especially between the relationship between Star and her uncle, that my kids really just picked up on immediately. They're like, no, that's important to tell. But that's one. I took them to see If Beale Street Can Talk. I think that was another one that sparked a lot of discussion.
Such a beautiful film. Wow.
Yeah, I think that was another one. There was a group of young men that I watched When They See Us with last year. That was a very tough watch.
Yeah, I tried.
Let me tell you how I still haven't seen all of chapter 4. Like, I just can't. It's just too triggering. But
that's
yeah.
the one.
We watched chapter 1, my oldest and I, and then at the end of it, she looked at me, I looked at her, and we're like, all right, we're good.
Yeah, my son couldn't get past chapter 1, and I couldn't get through chapter 4. It's real. They're like, we're in it. We don't need to watch this.
Yeah. So one thing I want to take a moment to do is once again make sure to make a plug for the book, and that is No Jewels, a biography of sorts in stanza. Make sure that you get the book. You'll be able to see the link, and you'll be able to follow that link. There is a soundtrack to the book as well, and you'll be able to find out more about that if you follow the link. It is a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. I really appreciate all of you. Dr. Green is going to come back on to close. The conversation has been an honor and a pleasure to be able to hang out with y'all
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
I didn't realize we were done.
I know.
It went by quickly because lively and good.
It's definitely been an honor.
Good conversation.
But look, thank you guys for joining. I know people are really busy. I want to thank Danielle and Trace. I know they weren't able to get on, but that's, you know, technology. Technology is beautiful, and technology is also what, give it and take it. That's it. Give it and take it. But I did miss out on two really brilliant minds. I wanted to, you know, bring the conversation, and next time, you know, hopefully soon. Check out Trace DePaz. She's an amazing poet. One of my favorites. Of course, Etiola and Nicholas are my favorites, but that's another conversation. Trace is right one step below them. Hey, make sure, you know, don't kill me. And Danielle Borsico, her book out now, Salt, is awesome. So, you know, this is really great guys here, and thank you, Dr. Green and Clarence and the rest of the team, especially April and Sherelle and Simone, who I've made for the last 2 hours. Thank you guys a lot.
So, thank you. I'm saying thank you to all of you for sharing this evening with us. It's been a really interesting discussion. Took away some words of wisdom and jewels. I just said the importance of gathering, the need to gather, the importance of unlearning certain behaviors, the many stories that we have that we're not privy to, the importance to break the cycles, or I like to say to break the narratives. And I thank you also for sharing those films and books that are helping to make a difference. And a special thank you to Ty for having the courage to write this book. And I found everything really, really motivating. The panelists really came up with some important, as I said, words of wisdom. And I want to echo what Dasan said. You'll be able to really support Ty by buying the book. And you'll be able to view the program as a video. We will send you the link for that shortly after the program. And I also encourage you to fill out an evaluation, which is at the end of this program. And stay tuned for our next webinar, which will be later this summer. This was our inaugural webinar. It's been recorded and it will go down in history. Thank you again.